If you feel like something is holding you back in life, or you've been through a painful past that affects your current situation, then you're not alone. When I first started reading this book, Goggins mentioned that he had gone through an incredibly difficult childhood. He said that his past was so rough that he had never met anyone whose childhood was worse than his. Of course, there are millions of children out there who have had even tougher experiences, but he was talking about the people he had personally met or heard stories from. He wasn't referring to childhood difficulties caused by illness or accidents, but rather those who were physically healthy, yet their lives were difficult in almost every way, at home, at school, and in their community. His story resonated with me because of the similarities to what I went through, but also the differences. Goggins showed how he overcame those hardships, and you'll hear more about that in this video. I want you to compare his struggles with your own, because what we can learn from hearing others' stories is that people have overcome much greater challenges than us. It can motivate us to realize that things can get better, and there are often more opportunities available to us than we think. This is the second part of the summary of Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So grab your coffee, as I've got mine ready, and let's dive in. Welcome, my friend, to Mind Mastery. I'm Mohammed Hassam, and it's a pleasure to have you here. When Goggins starts his story, the very first sentence he writes is, "We found hell in a very beautiful neighborhood." He says they lived in a village near Buffalo, New York, back in 1981, in a high-end neighborhood with doctors, lawyers, football players, executives, and authors living around them. It was a community where crime was rare and everyone was living the American dream. Goggins and his family lived in a 2-story wooden white house with fancy cars parked outside, including a '62 Rolls-Royce and a Volvo that his mom drove. Every morning at 7 a.m., the neighbors would see them dressed neatly. His dad in a sharp suit, Goggins and his brother in tucked-in shirts, all smiling and exchanging greetings with everyone. But as Goggins says, the glass facade showed more than it hid. The truth was, they'd just come home from a sleepless night working at his dad's skating rink business. His mom, still up from the night before, would take them to school while his dad went to bed. He describes how their home was a nightmare. His father, whom he calls the devil, would abuse them both physically and emotionally. Goggins was just 6 years old at the time, trying to hide the bruises and avoid letting teachers notice. School became his safe haven, the one place where he found peace and quiet, away from the chaos of home. Their dad's business, Skateland, was open for just 3 hours in the evening, but the work for Goggins, his mom, and his brother would last until the early morning. After the rink closed, they would clean the place until 6 a.m., and then head home to get ready for another day of school. Goggins recalls one night when his mom caught his dad flirting with another woman, which led to a terrifying confrontation. His father grabbed a gun from under the couch where Goggins had been lying and tucked it into his pants before they quickly left for home. It wasn't just the daily physical abuse that made life unbearable. It was the constant fear of what would happen next. Goggins remembers one incident when he opened the garage door, accidentally setting off the alarm, only to see his father approaching with a gun. His father thought someone had broken in, but when he realized it was Goggins, he simply pointed the gun at him and stared for a few long, terrifying minutes before walking away. Their escape from this nightmare came through the help of a neighbor, Betty, who guided Goggins' mom on how to leave her abusive husband. She advised her to get a credit card in her name, slowly regain his trust, and then plan the escape. After a while, Goggins' mom managed to get the credit card, and one day during breakfast, she decided it was time to leave. She told Goggins and his brother to pack their things, and they loaded them into the Volvo. Despite his father's disbelief and threats, they drove away, finally escaping the hell they had lived in for so long. Life can take unexpected turns, and sometimes we find ourselves in situations we never imagined. My mother, always knowing what to do in the midst of chaos, decided to stop at a gas station and used a payphone. She called a friend, telling her the car had broken down and that she couldn't just leave. My mother was filled with despair, but her friend calmed her down, asking her where she was. My mother wasn't quite sure, but she was told to find someone in charge at the station to get help. Eventually, she managed to get in touch with the person, who then connected her with her friend again. "You're in such and such area," her friend said, "and there's a place nearby that fixes Volvo cars. There's also a hotel where you can stay the night, and in the morning you can continue your trip." My mother thanked her and found the hotel, but it was obvious that everyone was overwhelmed. The hotel manager saw the stress on our faces and kindly offered us a conference room to sleep in, with a restroom nearby. He told us we had to be out by 9 a.m. because there was a meeting scheduled, but we didn't mind. That night, my mom didn't sleep at all. She was too anxious, sitting outside by the car, keeping an eye on our bikes strapped to the back of the car, fearing someone might steal them. The next day, we got up early, found someone who was able to fix the car, and by sunset, we were back on the road. Finally, we reached my grandparents' house in a small village in Brazil. The moment we arrived, my mother broke down in tears. It was as if she felt a wave of relief, even though returning to live with her parents was far from ideal, especially since she had no job or prospects at the time. Yet, despite all of that, she managed to find a job, just as I've mentioned before, my friend. It wasn't much, and the pay was low, but it was something. I ended up enrolling in the second grade, even though I should have been in the third. I think this was back in 1980 or maybe 1983, and I struggled so much that I failed and had to repeat the grade. I was behind in my studies, and I was assigned to a school run by a woman named Sister Catherine. The school was small, with only 15 students or so, and the classrooms were shared between grades. Sister Catherine, though stern, became someone who truly cared about my education. She spent extra time with me, knowing I was behind, teaching me to read and write. I eventually passed the second grade and moved on to the third, but the next teacher I had was nothing like Sister Catherine. She was harsh and unkind, always criticizing and belittling me, to the point where I developed a stutter from the anxiety she caused. School, which had once been my safe haven, became a source of constant stress. In high school, I fell into the habit of cheating just to get by. I wasn't really learning. I was just getting through. By the time I got to high school, cheating had become second nature, and I didn't realize how much I was cheating myself until later in life. My brother, on the other hand, returned to live with our father, unable to bear the poverty we were living in with my mother. We were so broke that we would pick up pennies off the street, as my grandfather always said. You never know when you might need it. There was one time when we were behind on bills, the fridge was empty, and we didn't even have gas in the car. We dumped all the loose change we had in the middle of the living room and started counting. It was enough to fill the car with gas, pay for some groceries, and we even treated ourselves to a meal at Hardee's that night. We lived through all kinds of hardships, but my mother, no matter how tough things got, always found a way to make it work. Eventually, she met a man who became like a father figure to me. He didn't shower me with affection, but he was always there, guiding me, helping me navigate life's challenges. We spent several years with him until one day, just before their wedding, tragedy struck. He went to play in a basketball game in Indianapolis, but that night, as he returned home, he was ambushed and shot. His father found him the next morning, and that's how we got the devastating news. Breaking the news to my mother was one of the hardest things I've ever experienced. She had just started to smile again, to find joy in life, and in a moment, it was all ripped away from her. She fell into a deep depression, and for years after, she barely engaged with me. She made sure I had food and a roof over my head, but she was distant, lost in her grief. In the midst of all this, I was still trying to figure out my own path. I got into more trouble in high school, and eventually my mother decided to move us back to Brazil to live with her family. Life in that village was harsh, filled with racism and violence. I even had a gun pointed at me once, an experience that shook me to my core. In high school, I was part of the basketball team, and it was the only thing that kept me going. But when I missed too many practices, I was kicked off the team. They didn't realize they weren't just taking away a sport from me. They were taking away the only thing that gave me hope. After that, I gave up on school completely. I stopped cheating, stopped caring about my grades, and even got into a huge argument with my mom. At one point, I decided I wanted to join the Air Force. My grandfather had served, and I admired him so much. But when I tried to take the entrance exams, I failed. Not once, but twice. I had been relying on cheating for so long that when it came time to prove myself, I couldn't do it. It was then that I had a moment of reckoning. I looked in the mirror at the person I had become, and I hated what I saw. I realized that no one was coming to save me. My mother, my teachers, my friends, none of them could fix my life. I had to take control of my own destiny. I shaved my head, changed my clothes, and started living with discipline. I woke up early every morning, cleaned up after myself, and hit the books hard. My mother noticed the change and hired a tutor to help me. That was the moment when everything shifted. I stopped being the kid who blamed the world for my problems and became the man who was determined to build a future, no matter how difficult the journey. My habits, discipline, and routines changed. Everything about my life transformed, including my appearance. This shift happened because I had a goal and a plan. There was no more room for shortcuts or cheating. This was all about putting in the effort. After taking the test for the third time, I successfully joined the Air Force. What I didn't realize, my friend, was that while I had become disciplined and accepted my circumstances, I still fee. And all the greatness, my honey friend, all the greatness comes in the next and final part.